A student from a prestigious university returned home from the library and has not been seen since. From the very beginning of the investigation, alarming, frankly strange, and even shocking facts began to surface. Eventually, this led to changes in legislation. Despite all efforts, the truth remained unknown for decades. Only in 2024 was the case finally solved. Tara Baker was born on January 20, 1977, in the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia. Her parents divorced when she was still a child. Later, her mother remarried, and the new family had a son. Tara had 2 brothers and a sister, among whom she was the eldest. From an early age, Tara showed an interest in law and regulations, setting her sights on becoming a lawyer or judge. She held court sessions with stuffed animals, made playful contracts with relatives, and wrote letters to politicians. Once, she even wrote a letter to the sitting president. The broadcast of his speech interrupted Tara's favorite TV show, and in the letter, she expressed her displeasure. After finishing school, the young woman enrolled in Georgia College. She completed the program early, in just 3 years, and earned 2 bachelor's degrees in law. Then, in 1991, Tara enrolled at the University of Georgia to study finance and move closer to her dream. This university was one of the best law schools in the country and was located in the small town of Athens, just a few hours' drive from her parents' home. Therefore, it was the perfect choice for Tara. She decided not to live in a dormitory, but to rent housing off campus. She chose a private house divided into 3 rooms that were rented out. The other 2 rooms were occupied by university students, one of whom Tara knew well from college. Tara also worked part-time at a prestigious law firm, which allowed her not only to pay rent and other expenses, but also to gain valuable experience in her future profession. In January 2001, when Tara was 23 years old, she was in her 2nd year at the university. She often spent a lot of time in the library preparing for classes, and the evening of January 18th was no exception. She went to the library with a friend and spent several hours there. Around 7:30 p.m., her friend went home, but Tara stayed. At approximately 9:46 p.m., Tara called her friend from the library to check if she had arrived home safely. Tara also mentioned that she planned to return home in a few minutes. The next day, around 6 p.m., her mother, Virginia Baker, received a phone call. At first, the woman thought someone was just playing a prank on her. The person on the other end of the line identified themselves as police and asked if her daughter had ever been arrested, as they needed her fingerprints. Thinking it was a joke, Virginia hung up, but then decided to call the police station. To her surprise, they confirmed she had spoken to a real detective and informed her that there had been a fire at Tara's house. Still not fully understanding what was happening, the mother asked to speak with her daughter. However, the detective replied that they couldn't find her, and an unidentified body had been found in the house. This was why they needed Tara's fingerprints. They further explained that the police had only located one of Tara's roommates, who was not home during the fire. The whereabouts of the second roommate and Tara herself were still unknown. Investigators suspected that the found body belonged to one of them. Virginia requested a description of the room where the body was found. The officer's response stunned her. He said the room contained many antique items, which Tara was passionate about and had collected a significant number of in her room. The family immediately set out for Athens, hoping that everything was just a misunderstanding and that Tara was safe. Upon arrival at the police station, no one spoke with them for a long time, keeping the family in the dark. Only after several hours did one of the detectives inform them that the body in the house belonged to Tara and that the cause of her death was not the fire, but murder. He then said he was too tired to answer their questions and left, adding that remains of the perpetrator were found under Tara's nails, which could help identify the killer. Tara's relatives were shocked by the news of her murder and anxiously sought answers, but none of the police officers shared any additional information. They tried to get some explanations, but to no avail. Since then, the local police did not communicate with the girl's relatives. They had to piece together information bit by calling and visiting the station. With difficulty, they managed to partially find out what had happened. Around 11 a.m. on January 19th, firefighters received a call to Tara's address. After extinguishing the fire, they found a body in the house, which was later identified as Tara Baker. Medical experts concluded that the girl had been murdered. Her body showed signs of strangulation and stab wounds. Additionally, it was suspected that she had been subjected to violence. The fire started after her death, leading investigators to believe that the perpetrator was trying to destroy evidence. However, the parents were unable to obtain a medical examiner's report or even details of the murder from the police. Later, Tara's relatives learned that many pieces of evidence might have been destroyed during the firefighting process. This is not uncommon, as the primary task of firefighters in such situations is to battle the flames and potentially save lives. Additionally, they could not have known in advance that there was a body in the house. Sometime later, the family found out that investigators likely did not even cordon off the house after discovering the body, allowing anyone to approach and even enter the house. While gathering information, the relatives faced not only the police's reluctance to share the progress of the investigation, but also constant rudeness and unprofessionalism. At some point, they began recording these conversations and tried to file complaints against the local investigators, but this yielded no results. Eventually, they decided to start their own investigation and sought help from a renowned criminologist who agreed to assist. However, a problem arose. The local police agreed to show him the case materials only on the condition that he would not share this information and his findings with anyone except the investigators, including Tara's family. The relatives couldn't even obtain Tara's death certificate. It was withheld for 10 years until the family appealed to the state governor. Only then were they able to obtain the document. Nevertheless, they refused to include a detailed cause of death, stating only multiple injuries. Despite this, the police continued the investigation, although there were controversial aspects, which will be discussed later. When firefighters extinguished the fire and found the body, they called the police to the scene. Realizing that the victim had been murdered, investigators began searching for evidence. However, the entire room was damaged by fire and drenched with water. It was later revealed that some items remained unexamined, including possible fingerprints. It was established that Tara's laptop was missing from her room. Although it was 2001, no other valuables from the house were stolen, casting doubt on the robbery theory. The police found no signs of forced entry, leading them to speculate that Tara might have known her killer and voluntarily let them into the house. However, the fire and the actions of the firefighters had severely damaged the crime scene, making it difficult to determine the exact time of death. That evening, Tara was home alone as her roommates were in other cities. Establishing the time of the murder was challenging, so medical experts set a time frame from 10 p.m., when the girl left the library, to 11 a.m., when neighbors called the firefighters. Most likely, the crime occurred closer to the morning, as the fire had not had time to spread far. The police also received witness statements from people who saw a middle-aged white man running down their street that morning. He was wearing only a t-shirt, which seemed odd given that it was winter. Another interesting detail was that a few days before the murder, a call was made to Tara's university. There was a specific number for requesting information about students, such as their phone numbers. Both students who needed to contact someone and professors used this service. A few days before the murder, a man called this number sounding heavily intoxicated. He asked for Tara Baker's phone number and managed to write it down correctly only on the 8th attempt. However, his identity could not be established. The police also knew that Tara had a boyfriend at the time of the murder. They began investigating him for possible involvement. The young man provided an alibi which was confirmed. However, he was not immediately removed from the list of suspects. Even after confirming his alibi, the police treated him as a suspect, calling him and his parents in the middle of the night and demanding that they come to the station in another city to provide additional biological samples, answer questions, or undergo a polygraph test. It's interesting that her boyfriend was the one who had to identify her body. He lived in another city and came immediately after receiving the call about the fire at Tara's house. Although Tara's parents were already in town, the police specifically asked her boyfriend to identify her. The body was still in the house, and he was taken directly there. He wasn't allowed inside, so one of the officers went in, took a photo of the body, and showed him the picture on the camera screen. In a state of shock, the boyfriend said he couldn't be certain if it was Tara. He mentioned that he had given her a pair of earrings, and if he saw them, he could identify her. The officer went back into the house, removed the earrings from the deceased, and showed them to the boyfriend. He then confirmed that the earrings belonged to Tara. Soon, the police turned their attention to another person. This was a university student who was in the same class as Tara. He had quite a problematic reputation. According to many female students, he constantly asked different girls out on dates, and often didn't take no for an answer. He had also asked Tara out, who always refused since she had a boyfriend. Despite this, he kept insisting. Some girls also reported that this person scared them with his strange behavior and made them feel uneasy. The detectives began looking into him, but they couldn't find any evidence of his involvement. At one point, he even asked Tara's friends to keep an eye on him, which was a rather controversial decision. However, this led nowhere. Another suspect was a lawyer who worked at the same company as Tara. Speaking with colleagues, investigators discovered that shortly before the murder, the man had started behaving quite strangely. There was a group of employees in their company who were close friends and regularly spent time together outside of work, going out to various places in the city. But at some point, this lawyer stopped participating in these gatherings. Moreover, just a few days before the incident, he told Tara that he wouldn't be able to come to her birthday celebration, which was supposed to take place the day after the murder. On the morning of January 19th, before the fire started, one of Tara's colleagues decided to try to persuade the man to attend the event, as Tara considered him a good friend and was upset that he had declined to be there. The colleague went to his office, but the man wasn't there. Considering that his workday had already begun, this was unusual. He had always been present in the mornings, but on that day, he was not in the office. The colleague also checked his work calendar, thinking the lawyer might have scheduled meetings, but it was empty. He didn't show up at all that day. However, the next day, he visited another colleague's home and behaved quite strangely. Many suspected that he regularly used illegal substances, which could explain his behavior. But there was something else. The colleague noticed several fresh scratches on his neck. As we remember, skin samples presumed to belong to the killer were found under Tara's nails. The lawyer claimed that a cat had scratched him and that he had no connection to Tara's murder. However, he behaved oddly again when asked who he thought committed the crime. The man started yelling that it was her father, but he didn't provide any arguments to support this claim. Another strange detail was that the lawyer suddenly resigned just a few months after the murder and left the state. It is unknown whether the police compared his DNA with the samples found under the victim's nails. Moreover, all these years, there has been no information on whether these samples were investigated at all. As with all other aspects of the investigation, the detectives shared absolutely no information, not even with Tara's relatives. Later, they found out that the lawyer had been secretly meeting with 2 female employees of the company, despite being married. This could explain his strange behavior and unexplained absences from work. Both women also said they were certain he used illegal substances. Police couldn't find any evidence linking him to the murder and eventually stopped considering him a suspect. Detectives also investigated employees of the company that serviced the house where Tara rented a room. They had a spare key, which could explain the absence of signs of forced entry. However, they didn't find any leads here either. Since then, there have been no significant developments in the case. Police continued to search for new suspects and witnesses, keeping most details of the case secret, explaining that disclosing information could harm the investigation. Over time, they received a few more potential leads. One witness reported seeing a dark-skinned man near Tara's house a few hours before the fire. Another mentioned seeing blood on a classmate's notebook shortly after the murder. Police investigated both leads, but they didn't lead to anything. The victim's parents raised $27,000 and offered it as a reward for any information that would help solve the case. Over the years, almost all detectives on the case have changed, and the new team stated they would continue the investigation, but there were no new breakthroughs. The main problem was the lack of evidence. According to the police, after the fire was extinguished and the firefighters worked in Tara's house and room, there was almost nothing left that could be of interest to the investigation. In 2020, 19 years after the murder, a podcast emerged where the host began covering Tara's case. Together with the victim's relatives and other participants, he compiled all available information on the crime and brought new attention to Tara's case. The police department handling the investigation also took note of this podcast. Eventually, this led to increased communication between the new detectives and Tara's relatives, effectively pushing for a renewed active investigation. Episodes dedicated to Tara aired for 2 years and had a significant impact on the fate of the case. Thanks in large part to them, authorities in the state of Georgia began drafting a bill aimed at reducing the number of unsolved cases. This bill was named after Tara and another girl from Georgia whose murder also remained unsolved. 18-year-old Rhonda Coleman was found dead in 1990, and her killer had not been found to this day. Despite this murder being clearly unrelated to Tara's death, it was decided to name this initiative the Coleman-Baker Bill. In 2023, it was unanimously passed, and the governor of Georgia visited Athens to sign it in the presence of both victims' families. The law envisioned creating a cold case unit within the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. Additionally, it empowered the victims' relatives to request the police to review unsolved cases, re-examine evidence, and take other steps to solve them. Once the law took effect in 2023, a similar unit was immediately established, which began investigating Tara's murder. They reviewed all available materials and started examining the few pieces of evidence, using modern DNA analysis tools. This continued for several months until May 13, 2024, when the police called a press conference. There, they announced that after 23 years since the murder, the perpetrator was finally arrested. He turned out to be a 48-year-old man named Edric Faust. During the press conference, investigators did not disclose how exactly they identified the suspect, stating only that modern DNA analysis tools and other biological evidence aided them. The reason they did not reveal all details is that it could jeopardize the ongoing judicial process, which has not yet begun. Only during the trial will they announce the evidence they have against the man. However, among the documents presented during Faust's arrest are charges of assaulting the victim, and his biological material matched DNA evidence. Additionally, as we recall, skin particles from the attacker were found under the victim's nails, and modern tools likely extracted the killer's DNA from them. As for Faust, he should have long been in the FBI database due to his extensive criminal history, including multiple arrests for various offenses, including assault, and serving a significant portion of his life in prison. At the time of Tara's murder, he was 25 years old and lived in the same city. However, Police stated they did not find any evidence that the suspect knew the victim, suggesting Faust may have gained entry to her home or convinced her to let him in under some pretext. Detectives also mentioned that they would never have identified Faust if not for the progressive DNA analysis methods used just days before his arrest. Currently, he is in jail awaiting trial, where details of the evidence pointing to his guilt will be revealed. Apparently, detectives indeed obtained conclusive results from the DNA testing, as Faust was denied bail. There are no doubts among the detectives regarding his involvement in Tara's murder, so her case is officially considered solved. The family of the girl, who fought for truth for 23 years, finally learned what happened to Tara and thanked the new detective team for bringing closure to the case. As for Rhonda Coleman, the second girl after whom the law is named, her case remains unsolved. However, now her family can hope that detectives will discover new evidence and hold the responsible party accountable, just as they did in Tara's case. Thank you for watching this video. This has been Criminologist's Diary. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more exciting investigations to come.